Billionaire Raj or Berozgaar Bharat? Is inequality rising in India? Is job creation India's biggest challenge as we enter this election season with all kinds of promises being made? Joining me now, our special guest, Professor Santosh Mehrotra, is economist who's been writing on this issue extensively. Harsh Gupta Madhusudan is author who also joins us. He's also been an investor. Mohan Kumaramangalam is Congress's spokesperson. Sanju Verma is the national spokesperson of the BJP. I'll come to the politicians in a moment, but I want opening remarks from all my guests. Starting with you, Harsh Madhusudan, how should we take this report? Should we take it as these seemingly conflicting reports, if at all they are, number of billionaires rising, but number of educated unemployed also troublingly high, and some reports suggesting, and I'll come to those reports later, inequality also widening. Your response, how should we see these conflicting reports coming in?
Thank you for having me, Rajdeep. See, it's very easy to understand. Let's say if an educated Indian in finance or technology today, instead of working out of Mumbai or Bengaluru, has a $200,000 job and goes to San Francisco or London, Indian inequality will fall. But Indian growth and Indian overall wealth will also fall, and the indirect jobs created by that person staying in India, the taxes will also fall. So inequality per se has to be seen in the context of the Indian average per capita income still being relatively low, $2,500 in nominal terms. But the Indian educated elite is at the very top layer, global in its aspirations, and can command global salaries whether they live and work in India or they do a business in India or they do business abroad. So inequality has to be seen in the context of mobility and opportunity. In terms of billionaires, the Hurun report still says that China actually has the most number of billionaires, more than even the US. It's just that one city in India, Mumbai, a favorite city of yours and mine, Rajdeep, dominates India. And therefore the headlines was like Mumbai overtakes Beijing. But again I ask, is it not the case that Indian billionaires, the Tatas, Adanis, Ambanis, are creating wealth based on real, better and cheaper products? Is not the Geo revolution creating the world's cheapest, fastest internet? Is not Adani creating infrastructure like ports and airports? Are they not real? India has failed at creating infrastructure after independence. In fact, crony capitalism could have been said to be true if billionaires were created in natural resources. Actually, groups like Vedanta have not done very well in the last 5 to 10 years. All billionaires in India who have created wealth for themselves, and one can argue whether the market gives them high multiples or not, have been because they have created something which India desperately needs. Now coming to jobs, it is absolutely true that there is a mismatch amongst the educated white-collar youth and the kind of jobs and aspirations those two don't meet. Having said that, the PLFS survey across rural and urban, across age groups, finds unemployment to be constantly falling over the last 10 years. In fact, even in this ILO report, since pandemic times, the youth unemployment amongst educated people have fallen. But that remains a challenge, and I agree with the chief economic advisor. How do we better mismatch it? Going forward, as technologies evolve, I think more jobs can
we'll come to solutions, Harsh, in a moment.
Back office, you can also be the middle office and perhaps the front office.
We'll come to solutions in a moment, but I want Santosh Mehrotra, who I believe has a very different perspective.
So I'll just
I'll come back to you, Harsh. Let's look at what Harsh has said, Santosh. He is reflecting upon the fact that the billionaires who are producing goods and resources which are, in a way, lifting a number of people out of poverty. The figures have shown, the government figures itself, that in the last decade, the number of people lifted out of poverty has also increased. How do you see these conflicting numbers? We have a lot of conflicting numbers before us. What's the big picture?
Rajdeep, the big picture is fairly straightforward. That the claim was just made that PLFS is showing that unemployment is falling. Even after falling, youth unemployment is double what it was in 2012, point 1. Point 2, PLFS does not estimate unemployment or employment with using internationally compliant definitions. The CMIE does. CMI's estimate of youth unemployment for 20 to 24-year-olds is 44%, not the 12% that PLFS would like us to believe. For 3 years, I was a member of the Standing Committee on Economic Statistics of the National Sample Survey Organization and tried to convince the National NSSO to try and change their definition, but failed. As far as the chief economic advisors claim that the government can do precious little to reduce social and economic problems or reduce unemployment, let me say the following. I was present when he said it. Firstly, for the government to pretend that malnutrition is something that happens to poor people and therefore there is nothing that the government could or should do is utter rubbish, and it speaks volumes for the fact that malnutrition has barely come down under this government. Secondly, as far as the schooling is concerned, despite a new education policy, we haven't had increases in public expenditure on education. It used to be 4% of GDP. NEP wants it to be 6% of GDP. The government's total expenditure, center and state taken together, is 2.9% of GDP. The center said that in a national health policy, they will come up with a national health expenditure doubling from 1.1% of GDP to 2.5% by 2024. Are we there? Nowhere close. We have gone from 1.1% to 1.3%. As far as employment is concerned, the government does not have an industrial policy, and it is pretending that it is making in India. Under Make in India, manufacturing employment fell, agricultural employment increased by 60 million. A sudden national lockdown, a poorly designed GST, a demonetization at 4 hours notice. We've had triple shocks delivered to the economy.
So I get your, I've allowed you uninterrupted to give your view. You believe, therefore, the glass is more than half empty in a way, and the government hasn't done enough, so the government cannot pass the buck, as you seem to suggest. The chief economic advisor was saying that the government can do precious little. I'm going to come to solution, Professor Mehrotra, because the diagnosis of the problem is there, and it's not just in India, it's across the world. Solutions are more difficult to find. Sanju Verma, your response, and specifically on the question of job creation. We are entering an election year, and therefore there is this whole question of Rozgaar. There is presumably what the government wants to do in terms of a Viksit Bharat, and there's what the opposition wants to do. I want both of you to tell me very clearly, what is your party going to do if you come to power? You first, Mrs. Verma.
Rajdeep, I can see that we are having a great debate, a very sensible one at that. I want to say a couple of things. First and foremost, I completely debunk, unconditionally and unequivocally this narrative that India is witnessing jobless growth, that jobs are not being created. First and foremost, your audience needs to know that for the first 9 months of financial year 2023-24, India's GDP growth stands at 8.23% after we recorded an 8.4% GDP growth for the December 2023 quarter. This is exceptional. This is, unbelievable, because the likes of Raghuram Rajan, have been saying for the longest time, India will not even do 4%. If they do 4.5% or 5%, that will be commendable. And here we are at 8% plus when the world is grappling to even do 2% or 2.5%. That's the first point. The second point about unemployment, and this is something that your audience needs to listen to very carefully. Ashwini Vaishnav, the railway minister, had a couple of months back said that we are creating actually not just 2 crore jobs per year, but more than that. And the Modi government has more than fulfilled its promises of 2 crore jobs per year. And I remember that, he came
That's
under
not what the data
criticism.
shows, ma'am. With due regard, that's not what the data shows. I don't think we should mislead audiences. That's certainly not what the data shows. But I asked you specifically what your government is doing, but go ahead.
I just started. Rajdeep, this is what I don't like. I'm barely about to
a fact check, ma'am. A fact check. There is no report which says we are actually giving more than 2 crore jobs. But go ahead.
Did I say that the report has said that? Did you allow me to even corroborate my statement?
Please do.
Are you in agreement
Please go
with
ahead, ma'am.
everything
Please
that
go ahead
Santosh
now.
Mehrotra said?
Let's not waste
Rajdeep,
airtime.
Please
Go
don't
ahead.
heckle me.
Go ahead.
I don't like this. You
Ma'am,
have
I
this
don't
bad
heckle
habit of
anyone. I
heckling.
only fact check. Let's not use word like heckle, but
you're
please
not
go ahead.
fact-checking me, you're heckling
I'm
me.
asking
Please
you again
listen
to
to me.
please go ahead. Let's not make
Yes.
it about me.
Yes, it's not about you, it's not about me either. Now let me finish
Please,
and don't break
audiences.
my chain of thought.
Yes.
Thank you. I was corroborating my statement with sources, but before that you jumped the gun.
Yeah.
Now listen to this very carefully. This data is out in the public domain. If you take the EPFO and ESIC data together, and in fact, I would even urge naysayers like Professor Mehrotra to look at this data. It says that every month on an average, if you combine the EPFO and ESIC data, we are adding 28 lakh subscribers, which means that every year we are adding something like 3.36 crore subscribers, which means that in the last 10 years of the Modi government, we've got 33.6 crore subscribers in the EPFO and ESIC segment. Now the counter argument could be, Arey Sanju Verma, how can you say 33.6 crore, so let's round that up to 34 crore people. Are you saying that 34 crore people have got jobs in the last 10 years? No. I am going to give a conversion rate of only 63%, because a lot of experts have said that the conversion rate to the EPFO and ESIC data historically is 63%. So assume that only 63% of the 34 crore subscribers to the EPFO and ESIC are actually new subscribers who got a job for the first time in the 18 to 25 age bracket. What is the number that you have, Rajdeep? What is 63% of 34 crores? Simple arithmetic, Rajdeep. What is the number?
You tell me.
You tell me. 63% of 34 crores. It's basic arithmetic, Rajdeep.
Madam,
63%. Okay, let me come in then. You could not answer basic arithmetic. 63% of 34 crores means 21.42 crore jobs were created, assuming that the EPFO and ESIC data does not have 100% conversion rate. We've accounted for some duplicity. We've accounted that maybe some people who are a part of EPFO are also a part of ESIC. We've also accounted for the fact that some people who are subscribers may not necessarily be getting a check at the end of every month. After all these assumptions, it is now certified India under the Modi government, based on EPFO data, which is in the public domain, based on ESIC data, which is in the public domain. I repeat, we have created 21.42 crore jobs.
You made your point. I will, producer, we will have specific time limits, ma'am. I've given you 2.5 uninterrupted. Before I come to you, Mohan, I just want Professor Mehrotra to respond, because those are numbers which are, she's right, Ms. Verma is right, are in the public domain. And the government has been trotting them out. Please look at EPFO data, look at ESIC data. Your response very quickly, Professor.
3 sentences, very simple. If you ask any NSSO statistician, they will tell you themselves that EPFO data is not jobs data. EPFO can only tell you that there is a certain amount of formalization that is taking place. EPFO, the NSSO,
so you're
which
saying
is
these are not extra, you're saying these are not additional jobs being created. Am I correct?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
All of this is already being captured by PLFS, and we know that some degree of formalization is taking place. EPFO data at the end of the year cannot be matched with what is at the beginning of the year. No statistician accepts EPFO data as jobs data.
Okay. I want to turn for a moment to Mohan Kumaramangalam, because Mr. Kumaramangalam, the Congress party is claiming that Berozgaar is going to be their big calling card in this election. You all have come out with a manifesto so far of the 5 so-called guarantees that you're giving people. And one of those guarantees is providing jobs, providing retainerships effectively to people. I want specifics now from you. It's one thing to say that the Modi government has not provided the kind of jobs that the government had claimed in 2014. Please show me how the Congress would do it. What is that one big idea that you have that will actually show that people will have jobs?
Rajdeep, I'll get to that.
Please get to that,
first,
sir.
I'll get to that immediately. Just give me 1 second. I just want to point out that, because there's all this data confusion now pervading where the ILO says something, the CMI says something, the PLFS says something. And so really the debate becomes about, is there unemployment? Is it an issue or not? And I'll just point to your own Mood of the Nation survey, where a simple majority said that unemployment is the most serious problem that they're facing, where a simple majority said that this government has done little to nothing for employment generation. Now, as far as how our approach differs from this government, it is mostly around the fact that all these government's measures have been supply side, and they've done very little to do demand stimulation. I'll give you just 8 things that the Congress party said that we're going to do so far. The very first is to just fill the vacant posts in the government itself, which is the low-hanging fruit, and create new posts. So we're talking about 30 lakh jobs there. We're talking about a version of the German apprenticeship program, a 1-year job to all graduates, which will give them on-the-job skilling. We're talking about a district-wide startup fund that would democratize capital availability, an employment guarantee for urban areas along the lines of Narega that we had for rural. And with stagnating rural wages, with stagnating overall real wages, we're talking about a national minimum wage of 400 rupees. We're talking about social security for gig economy workers and increasing women's participation in labor force. Any economist will tell you, if you look at all the emerging economies in the world, most of them have grown on the back of an increased participation of women in the labor force. We're reserving 50% of new central government jobs for women. Aside from this, we are doing what we have been asking this government for many years, which is do a serious demand stimulation by setting aside 1 lakh rupees per year for the woman head of the household of all poor families.
Where's the money going to come from? The maths that y'all are doing. You see, the worry is that the maths that y'all are doing will not match the reality on the ground. All these claims that you're making, where's the maths?
Rajdeep, we'll see the maths. We've always had the maths. When we first introduced Narega, skeptics said it wasn't possible even then. Let me just say that this government has given a massive corporate tax cut. They have increased import duties. They've given PLI subsidies. I'm saying they've taken a particular approach. But all that approach has been supply side, and almost nothing has been on the demand side, whether it's been cutting taxes on it, cutting indirect taxes, or even cutting direct taxes. We're using a different approach. We are always on the demand side of this table, and that is because if you don't stimulate demand, you won't have private investment. Growth in private investment is what will create jobs at the end of the day. Okay. Private consumption, which is now expected to grow by 3%, was expected to grow last year by 4.4%, is the real problem today in this country.
Can I, for a moment, look at inequality? Just a minute, ma'am. We listened to both sides patiently, and I want to go back to Harsh and Santosh Mehrotra. First on inequality, because this is a contentious issue. There are those who are saying that inequality is actually coming down because people are, more and more people are being lifted above poverty. But the World Inequality Lab's recent report has troubling news. By 2022-23, top 1% income and wealth shares are at their highest levels, 22.6 and 40.1%. India's top 1% income share is among the highest in the world. Therefore, the billionaire Raj, according to this report, is more unequal than a British colonial Raj. This is as per the World Inequality Lab report. Inequality declined post-independence till early 1980s, has skyrocketed since early 2000s. I want to make it clear, since early 2000s, not just 2014, Indian income tax system might be regressive when viewed from the lens of net wealth. 2% super tax on net wealth of 167 wealthiest families will give 0.5% of national income in revenues. Wealth tax would create fiscal space for investments in health, education, nutrition. These are some of the suggestions. I want to understand from you, Harsh, looking at that report, looking at the concerns over educated unemployed, do you have a magic solution? Do you believe that there is out there? Or do you believe that we must live with the reality across the world that it's not going to be easy to create jobs in this new world of AI, of technology, and to reduce inequalities overnight?
Just very quickly on the inequality point, Rajiv, Thomas Piketty and his co-authors have themselves put a footnote in their long paper saying that basically they have made up the data. There is actually an IMF paper, which is much more credible than the World Inequality Organization, whatever the name of this institute is, 2022 IMF paper, which says that post-food subsidy, the Gini coefficient which measures inequality, is the lowest in India since 1993. So remember, you have to, of course, we are talking about consumption inequality here, not income inequality. Now on income inequality, I once again go back to saying that you could have a lot of rich Indians today move out of Bangalore and Mumbai and go to Boston, and your inequality will fall. Will that help the Indian economy? Another way of saying that is, in India, the income tax, because the income tax is one of the so-called solutions offered here, actually begins at a multiple 2 to 3 times of the per capita income. Per capita income in India is around 2 lakhs. Income tax effectively begins around 6 lakhs in India. Whereas in the US, per capita income is $80,000, but your income tax effectively begins around $25,000. That's another way of saying that whatever little you could squeeze out from the top 1% or 5% in India is already done. If you do it anymore, there is Canada, there is Germany, there are other countries ready to dangle a blue card, a green card, a permanent residence, and that will just squeeze out talent from India. What we have to do is broaden the tax base. GST has partially done that. In due course of time, rich farmers could be taxed. In due course of time, more revenue resources like privatization have to be done. But the only solution is economic growth in the long run. That is the only square which circles the whole thing here. And that requires physical investment in infrastructure and human capital. Okay. I disagree with the Congress spokesperson that a big demand side stimulus would help. We could agree, we could quibble a bit on the macro side, but basically without new infrastructure, you cannot have Make in India. Manufacturing employment, job creation is going down throughout the world because of automation. So it's about value added India, making India a product nation. That will create wealth and value in India, which in turn leads to jobs. The government has provided a floor in terms of electrification, in terms of gas, in terms of drinking water, so that everybody has the opportunity and mobility for the next generation to go into the elite educated circles.
You know, Professor Malhotra, if you look at the Modi government track record on public infrastructure, this government over the last 10 years has invested more than any previous government. And therefore, they believe they are creating, as Harsh just mentioned, the building blocks for the next growth stage. And that will eventually percolate right down. That will eventually maybe create more billionaires, but will reduce inequalities. That's the government's claim. Mohan Kumaramangalam can nod his head, but that's how the government sees India's economic future. Your response, Professor Malhotra?
Infrastructure is something that the previous government was also doing.
But not on the scale. Let's be honest. The scale that the Modi government has done is much higher.
I could quibble on that. We could debate on that. I could go into very great detail, and I would demolish the statement that you've just made.
Okay.
Never mind. I'm not going to go there. The fact of the matter is it's not creating the jobs. It's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that we are getting there. Let's just get to the bottom of this. The fact of the matter is, Rajdeep, that the growth rate of the economy has come down to 5.7% in the last 10 years. The economy was growing at 8% for a 10-year period from 2004 to 14. We would have been a much bigger economy today had we continued to grow at 8%. That's the bottom line. And even then there was a international crisis. Second point, inequality has been growing because that's the national policy of our current government. It has grown at a rate we have never experienced. And the claim that was just made by the gentleman, Harsh, who said that the IMF paper, it was a credible paper, and the paper that has just been put out by the WID, the World Inequality Report, is actually not a credible paper. He was only quoting Bhalla. And the paper that was put out by the IMF was a Bhalla paper. Now let me tell you what the authors who I spoke to this evening about Bhalla's paper said. They said, Mr. Bhalla has got that footnote wrong, and Mr. Harsh has swallowed Bhalla Sahab hook, line and sinker. As so-called IMF paper
Professor Bhalla is not here to make the argument. I want to focus on the macro number. You tell us very quickly before I go to Sanju Verma why you believe inequality has risen.
Well, inequality has risen because we've given resources to a certain big company which has been not creating infrastructure, as has been claimed in this show. He has been buying infrastructure. He's bought existing ports from private to public. 1, 2. He's been buying airports which have been sitting there. He's been buying...
No, Ms. Verma, you must have the patience.
Miss Verma, I did not interrupt you, so please, I am kind.
Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
thank you.
Finish up, Professor.
He's only buying, and he's buying at the behest of the government, and therefore the government needs an industrial policy. If you want to create jobs, the government needs an employment policy which is aligned to an industrial policy, and PLI is not an industrial policy, and nor is Make in India. Under this government, manufacturing jobs have fallen, agricultural jobs have increased. That's what this government's policy has been.
You made that point earlier. Let's turn to that jobs issue, and then I want to bring you in Sanju Verma. This is what a CSDS survey done in the first week of March says about how people, educated youth see the possibility of getting jobs in the last 2 years. Very difficult said 25%, difficult said 55%, easy said 16%, very easy said 3%. So there is clearly a worry that young Indians have about getting jobs, and when I say jobs, it also means quality jobs. How do you, I want your solution. The Congress has issued a manifesto where they've given a right to apprenticeship, and some of the details have just now been shared by Mr. Kumaramangalam. I want to know beyond the slogans what the government intends to do. I don't want to know what a slogan of Viksit Bharat, but give me 1, 2, 3 things that the Modi government will do if they get re-elected, ma'am.
Rajdeep, my first very humble request to you, very politely, let me make my point without being interrupted, because Professor Mehrotra is not really speaking the gospel truth, but he gets a free run. So I think, fairness demands that Sanju Verma also gets to put her point. Then you can interject and reject what I have to say.
Give me your top 3 points. The 3 things the Modi government will do.
Rajdeep, I have not even started. Do not heckle.
Ma'am, I'm not heckling, I'm asking you. I asked you very politely. Give me the 3 things your government will do. Very politely.
Rajdeep ji, मुझे बात शुरुआत तो करने दीजिए भाई साहब, अभी तो मैंने शुरुआत नहीं की है.
Please.
Thank you. I will not allow lies to go uncountered and unchecked in an unfettered manner. First and foremost, I will answer your question about what the BJP plans to do. It will take me only 30 seconds to give out what we need to do. An economy growing at 8.23%, they say jobs are not getting created. We are selling 1 lakh tractors a month. They are saying jobs are not getting created. Maruti Suzuki sells 1.7 lakh cars a month, which means almost 5 cars every minute. They say jobs are not getting created. We are selling 22 lakh motorcycles every month. They say jobs are not getting created. We are selling 6 lakh scooters every month. They say jobs are not getting created. We have the second largest smartphone market in the world, valued at $200 billion. But they say jobs are not getting created. We have the world's 4th largest automotive market at $125 billion. But they say jobs are not getting created. We have an outbound civil aviation market to the tune of $38 billion. But they say jobs are not getting created. We have an infrastructure industry the size of $700 billion. They say jobs are not getting created. Our annual exports are $765 billion, and they say jobs are not getting created. We have a food processing industry of $54 billion, but they say jobs are not getting created. We have a tourism outbound industry of $38 billion, and they say jobs are not getting created. मेरा simple सवाल है, jobs create नहीं हो रहे हैं, but tourism industry is growing at a compounded 15%. Smartphone, we did not have 2 factories. Today we have more than 2,000 factories. Suddenly, mobile phone manufacturing has jumped up by more than 1,500%. Who's producing these mobile phones? Who's buying these 23 lakh motorcycles every month? Who's buying these 6 lakh scooters every month? Who are the people who are making sure that our infrastructure industry is today a humongous $700 billion? So I have decided to wag the dog by its tail and prove to you that because jobs are getting created, you are seeing the economy at 8.23%.
Okay.
Because jobs are getting created.
Ma'am,
today we
I
have
did
the
not
world's
stop
6th
you.
largest stock market.
I think
because jobs are getting created.
You make a
India's
strong
electricity
argument.
sector is the 3rd largest.
Okay.
Because jobs are getting created, India's steel sector is the 2nd largest. Because jobs are getting created, our civil aviation market is the 3rd largest. Because jobs are getting created.
Ma'am, I've heard you. I've heard you. You made a very strong, compelling argument based on what you're claiming are the government's achievements. Ma'am, just a minute. Let Mohan Kumaramangalam therefore respond as a final word. Mohan Kumaramangalam, there remains this mismatch in a way between the data at one level that is available, which suggests there are concerns over inequality, concerns over job, but there's also the data which Sanju Verma has just provided, which shows that in various sectors, there is enough evidence to suggest that there has been growth and therefore this growth could not have taken place, she says, without the creation of jobs. Your final response.
Rajdeep, nobody is saying that jobs are not created. Unemployment is a rate. We're talking about the number of people seeking jobs and the number of jobs that are available. Talking in absolute numbers is frankly juvenile. And I'm glad she mentioned two-wheeler sales because two-wheeler sales have gone down. There's actually a growth in the number of jobs demanded in Narega. I'm going to quote to you the MD of Britannia, who says that he just said this a few days ago, we're seeing a clear slowdown in rural areas. Despite us continuing to get deeper into rural areas, getting more into villages, we have started to see the rural economy splutter a bit. There is a real rural-urban divide today, and there is a real income inequality problem today. This is what we have been saying continuously, and I'm not sure why you should ask the BJP what their manifesto is for jobs, because according to them, Sab Changasi, they have solved all the problems there is to do. Can you not interrupt me? Can you not interrupt me, Sanju? I listened to you rant for a while.
Finish up.
All I'm saying is the 71% of respondents to your MOTN survey who said that unemployment is a serious problem, or at least is somewhat serious, are clearly unqualified or are clearly their problem.
I might also point out that many of those people who said in our survey that jobs is a serious problem or somewhat serious, 71%, many of them still said they would vote for the Modi government. But that's another debate about whether electoral preferences also match your concerns about issues like Berozgaar. We focused on this issue. We will continue to raise concerns over this issue and test the political parties on how they will resolve it, because these are the real issues that should matter in a way at election time. For now, for all my four panelists, for patiently listening to each other, I appreciate all of you joining us and sharing your views.